A big part of any collaborative innovation project that we conduct is brainstorming sessions. They are super important as that's where we gather ideas that can later become solutions to a client's problem. Apart from that, we use brainstorming to help teams overcome challenges with the solutions they are working on, and we love combining ideas of different teams, finding new concepts and new solutions. So brainstorming sessions are really important in our projects. That's how we add collaboration to our processes. And I want to talk about how you should not conduct a brainstorming session, which mistakes are not to be made if you want to end up with a bunch of great notions. I conducted a great number of both online and offline brainstorming sessions myself, and I did make mistakes, and some of them are the ones that I'm going to mention here. For example, I didn't always give time to participants to get ready before an active discussion, and of course I participated in a number of sessions, but because I tried it and I know how it works, I saw what I can improve in my facilitation. I can speak about it. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about mistakes in brainstorming. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Lisa and I've been working for years on organizing collaborative university competitions for world well-known companies to solve their extreme innovation challenges. And now I continue my journey with a goal to foster innovation by helping different parties of the innovation process collaborate and co-create. On this channel, I explore collaboration projects for innovation management. I share my experience in managing these projects and processes and uncover strategies for making collaboration efforts more effective. And the very first mistake, and probably the most critical one that you can make when you conduct a brainstorming session, is forgetting to define a clear goal for it. Why are you gathering? What are you looking for? Obviously, the general goal of any brainstorming is ideas. Well, ideas for what? For your next year vacation? For new meals in cafeteria? You have to define a clear problem that you're trying to solve. Without it, there is no point in organizing the process. You might hear a few general ideas, but most likely they won't be useful for your challenge. And I've participated in such sessions without clear goals. They had a great number of participants, really smart people from different fields. And during these sessions, some of these participants introduced products they're working on. And at the end of their presentations, they were supposed to be a discussion where others had to suggest ways of improving the product, how they could collaborate, what they could do together, etc., etc. And that's the problem, you see? There were no clear goals of those discussions, of those brainstorming sessions. If the goal was to, for example, suggest solutions to a particular problem that particular product had, then participants would be able to focus on this problem. Their mind would be focused. They would be able to come up with something targeted, some concrete ideas on how to solve this problem. But because there was this very clear goal, I believe for many participants it was not really clear what they could offer and whether there is anything to offer at all, and they did not understand where their mind should go. So in a way, I believe it was a big waste of talent and big waste of potential, and I'm pretty sure there could be many more ideas generated during such sessions. So targeting a very specific challenge during your brainstorming session will allow participants to focus their thoughts on this challenge and start proposing something very concrete. Then, during brainstorming, you can build up ideas, enhance them with new suggestions from other participants. But having a specific target would help you to guide your participants. I also suggest limiting the number of problems you are going to discuss within one single brainstorming session. Even within a day, I believe, if you plan to dedicate the whole day to brainstorming, especially if we are talking about online sessions, because I believe it's much more difficult with online sessions, and yeah, it's very difficult to brainstorm on more than 2-3 major points at once. As I mentioned, we have brainstorming sessions during hackathons and other collaborative innovation projects that we conduct, when we, together with all participants, discuss solutions of different teams and come up with ideas on how to overcome certain obstacles or how to improve solutions presented. And after the third solution we discuss, I can see how the enthusiasm of everyone is just fading away and leaving the room. It's quite tiresome to constantly keep your brain under such pressure, and the last teams and their solutions might get less attention and less ideas. It's better to have a couple of sessions, ideally during even several days, again, especially if you cannot meet offline, because yeah, as I said, online brainstorming is more difficult for everyone, for participants, and it's more difficult to manage. So yeah, that would be the best, and that would be the ideal solution, to split your brainstorming session and create a couple of them, and organize big breaks, I don't know, like for lunch, or yeah, just big breaks for coffee, to give people's brain some rest. Another mistake I have to mention is not setting up rules and the process of your brainstorming. I mean, you cannot just start a brainstorming session by saying create and hope you will get some adequate results. Even if you define the goal, you will get something, yes, but it's uncertain how useful it's going to be. It is really essential to have a structured process with a beginning and an end, a time limit, rules, and ideally special techniques for brainstorming. And there are many different techniques for brainstorming that exist. So you need to know when you plan to start and how long the session will take. Of course, when you think about this, when you think about timing, you need to keep in mind the problem you are solving, how many people will be involved, etc. We're going to talk about this a little bit later. And you have to prepare rules for participants. Rules like they shouldn't interrupt each other, they should listen carefully, they should not criticize others' ideas. You need to make it clear what they should do if they want to say something, like they should raise their hand or something else. You also must mention tools and which tools you're going to use during the session and how these tools should be used. So you need to give very clear instructions. And again, if you're using any specific technique for brainstorming, you need to explain how it's going to work and what the process looks like. You should absolutely dedicate some time for individual work. I actually love to give some time for participants to get ready before the session itself, especially if we are going to discuss something big, something serious. The idea is to give participants a lot of information about the topic so that they can read it, analyze it, and come up with solutions in their free time when the brain isn't actively involved in thinking through the problem. But when the process of solving the challenge, solving the problem, it goes somewhere on the background. That's when you can get some really brilliant ideas. But of course, that's not going to work for all cases and all problems. But anyway, I really recommend you to dedicate some time before the session, before the active discussion, for the participants to come up with their own initial ideas. They need to have this time. And yeah, when it comes to the rules and the process, you should announce it to everyone. All participants should be aware of these rules. They should know it before the session starts. So yeah, just make sure that you get ready and you announce them. The next mistake I want to mention here is connected to rejecting some ideas during the brainstorming session. This shouldn't happen. During brainstorming, you have to consider all possible solutions, no matter how impossible or crazy they seem. Brainstorming is about generating ideas, not evaluating them. You should evaluate the result of the session separately after it's over. Sometimes you're looking for something more practical, and it's okay, but sometimes impossible and unconventional ideas can contribute more to achieving your goal than traditional approaches that you're likely using anyway. Even if the concept that seems too much is not going to be implemented, it might lead a discussion in a new direction and evoke new associations and new ideas. So you should really consider all ideas and carefully write them down. Write down every single suggestion from everyone. You will thank yourself later for it. And one more thing about this is shutting down ideas you don't like is definitely going to influence the discussion in a bad way, because participants might start being hesitant to propose something new because, well, who knows whether you will like it or if you are going to reject it. And trust me, nobody likes it when their ideas are rejected in front of everyone, especially. So you might really lose important solutions. And another reason why you or any facilitator that you're gonna have shouldn't say no to ideas is biases. You might be biased, and you will likely be. That's how our mind works. It often cannot tell straight away whether a new idea might make sense or not, but we tend to avoid anything completely novel, and there are many different biases that might influence you. So it's better to leave making decisions for a later stage. And that's why you also must stop participants from expressing judgmental thoughts about someone's ideas. Brainstorming, if it's not a specific session where you're actually looking for pros and cons of a solution, is not the right time for it. The next mistake that I'm going to talk about is connected to timing of your brainstorming session. And stopping the session as soon as you hear a great idea is a mistake. First, you can always build on that idea to make it even better. And second, one good idea is simply not enough. We need more. That great solution that you heard might open the door to many other outstanding ideas. So take your time to hear all of them. And I believe, of course, there is a certain point, a moment, when the discussion reaches its peak, after which it goes down, and everyone is tired and it's difficult to get any more interesting ideas, so it doesn't make sense to continue. And I believe that's exactly the point when you need to stop the discussion and just allow participants to share their ideas that might come after the session separately. It might be difficult to feel this moment, but once you see it's getting quieter in the room, you see less ideas coming and more of them repeat each other, there is no passion in the discussions anymore, that's when this moment to stop it comes. Also, you should really dedicate enough time for the session. It's better to take more time than less of it, because if you take more time for a meeting, you can always cut it short, right? But at least you will not be in a hurry. And 15-20 minutes for one big topic you want to discuss in a room with, 15 people is probably too little. It's not enough, depending on the topic, of course, but I'd give it half an hour to be on the safe side. Moreover, as I mentioned before, you definitely want to dedicate some time before this active discussion to let participants work separately and come up with their initial ideas before they voice them. One more point here, and I kind of talked about it before, but I just want to repeat it. You definitely want to break your long session into a few ones. If you really have a number of problems to talk about, again, like 2-3 big topics per session is the maximum. Do it like in a few sessions if it's more than like 3 topics. And I wouldn't do a session longer than an hour and a half, because after that, it's really better to have a break for 20, maybe 30 minutes. Again, I think like if you have never tried it before with brainstorming sessions, dedicate more time. And yeah, if you feel like the discussion is coming to its end, to that peak, just end it before the time is up, instead of trying to squeeze everything into little time. It's so much better. And honestly, I wish I could give you a specific equation that you could use to understand how much time you need to book for a brainstorming session, but I don't have this equation. I believe that a lot depends on what specifically you're going to discuss. A lot depends on the complexity of the topic and how many people you are going to have in the room. Any number that I'm going to give you now is too vague, and like all these numbers I gave you, they are like super rough estimates. If you have an idea about brainstorming and wonder how much time it could take, you can just text me on LinkedIn, we can talk about it, and I might be able to give you a more precise answer. But right now, I will not do it because, yeah, it's what's going to work for one case won't work for another. Another mistake that I want to mention is connected to limiting ways of sharing ideas. Because listen, not everyone feels comfortable sharing their thoughts openly, especially if there are many strangers in the meeting. For some people, it's also easier to write down or draw their ideas. And trust me, you don't want to miss out on those contributions. So the best way is to let participants share their ideas in different ways. Luckily, what a wonderful time we live in. There are so many options for you to do it. You can allow using like simple papers and pens to deliver ideas. You can use special programs, special software tools. For example, during our projects, we use Mentimeter and Mira boards a lot. You don't even need to write down your name and ask participants to write down their names. They can stay anonymous and still share their ideas, and it might be very, very useful, especially in case you have a room full of more introverted people. But listen, just because you don't hear from them, it doesn't mean that they don't have ideas. They might have lots of these ideas. They just might be too hesitant to share them. They might be too shy. And moreover, even if we talk about people working in one team, seeing each other every day, it might be stressful for them to speak up openly in front of their colleagues and bosses, because yes, you might have a rule to not judge the ideas during the session, but it doesn't mean that your ideas won't be judged after the session. So what you need to do is to create an environment so that everyone can openly share their ideas, and so that they can do it as safely as possible. Another thing and another mistake is when you have too many or too few people for your brainstorming session. Like obviously having a session inviting 100 people is a little bit too much. I can't even imagine what you should do to make it effective. I'd probably gather ideas separately and conduct separate sessions in groups if you have that many people. However, having too few people is also not so good, because the number of ideas will be limited. And when it comes to how many is too few, I'd say that it doesn't really depend a lot on the actual number of your participants, but it depends more on who these people are and what their background, what their area of expertise is. To have a really effective brainstorming session, it's better to invite people with different backgrounds, experience, coming from different areas, having different views on the same problem. So even if you have like 5 people with diverse qualifications and skills, I wouldn't say it's too few. It might be just exactly what you need, and you might just gather a quick brainstorming session, you know? Like from my experience, we can conduct sessions with up to 40 people, I would say, like 50. Yeah, it's like on sometimes it might work, but it's like, yeah, 50 is still quite a lot already. And yeah, we can have such sessions with 3-4 of them. Obviously, a lot depends on the topic of your brainstorming and other conditions. But yeah, as I said, more depends on where these people are coming from and what is the goal of your discussion. But yeah, actually, you can have a brainstorming just on your own. And the last point, the last mistake that I want to mention is connected to a facilitator. You cannot have a successful brainstorming session if your facilitator is not actively engaged, involved in this process. So you really need to find the right person for this very important mission. The person managing the session, facilitating the session, should help participants share their opinions. He or she should bring focus back to the problem when necessary. They should keep time and stop inappropriate arguments and ask questions to spark creativity in participants. They should be very attentive to details and they should listen carefully and be active listeners, you know. They should feel the room, understand what's going on, understand when it's the right time to stop the discussion, understand and see who's less active and encourage them and find ways for them to share opinions. It is really important also for the facilitator to identify people in the room who has very strong influence over others. There is more to it. To this point, actually, there should be a different video about this, how to conduct a brainstorming session so that's we can fight biases. But for now, I have a video about biases in collaborative innovation projects, so you can just check it here. So the facilitator, at the same time, while they should do that and they should be really involved in the process, but the facilitator is never the star of the show. They should not express their opinion during the session about some solutions or in general. They might be experienced in the area, though I would probably not recommend putting the person who's experienced in the area of the discussion to a facilitator's place. I would recommend to find someone neutral. They might come up with some ideas, they might come up with some questions, but they should still let participants review this idea and build it up. The facilitator is the central link in connecting everyone, all the participants of the brainstorming session. Yeah, and it is crucial to choose them wisely. Well, that's all for today. And yeah, I hope that this video was useful. I hope that it will help you avoid some mistakes when you're going to conduct your brainstorming sessions. If you have any questions about brainstorming, just please feel free to put them in the comment section below, or just feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and ask these questions. I'll be happy to help you. I'll be happy to talk to you about them. If you ever experienced other mistakes, if you ever saw other mistakes during brainstorming sessions, also please feel free to share them. Let's talk about how to avoid them. And yeah, I just wish you great brainstorming sessions and great innovation projects, of course. As always, good luck with them. And yeah, I wish you a good one and hope to see you next time. Bye!